Imagine it's day 10, and something happens that you completely didn't expect. You finally have a chance to leave, and you almost take it. Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're diving into a literal mind-bending psychological endurance test. I'm talking about being totally stripped of your daily routine, your freedom, and your entire sense of time, all while being locked in a blindingly white room with someone you have never, ever met. It is the ultimate test of human resilience, patience, and, well, greed.
Okay, let's dive into this, because the stakes here, they're absolutely massive. $500,000. That is a completely life-changing amount of money just dangling right in front of our two subjects, Bailey and Susie. So let's see exactly what it took to walk away with that cash.
I want you to honestly ask yourself this right now. Could you survive 100 days in a white room with a complete stranger? You know, it sounds super simple at first, right? You just sit there, chill out, and collect the money. But as we're about to see, the human brain desperately needs stimulation, and when you completely strip that away, the simplest things become absolute agony.
Let's break down the rules of the chamber real quick, because they establish this brutal baseline of severe sensory deprivation. First, 100 days in isolation. Second, 2 complete strangers. Fourth, no clocks, no windows to the outside world. But rule number 3, that's the linchpin. If one person leaves, both lose everything. They are literally sharing a single fate. Imagine your massive payout being entirely dependent on some random stranger's mental fortitude.
And man, the reality of this harsh environment set in immediately. You've got this brilliant white room, an endless, depressing supply of unseasoned canned chicken, and zero concept of time. Things unraveled fast. On night 1, Bailey and Susie made the massive mistake of sleeping for only 2 hours. That meant they officially started their second day at 2:37 a.m., totally disoriented. They even had to tear paper from their journals just to make playing cards to stave off the crushing, mind-numbing boredom. And this brilliantly illustrates how the hosts specifically sequenced these milestones to slowly wear down their mental defenses. Let's look at day 10. They've been doing this for 10 days straight. Same routine, same stress, same silence. But then, something happens they didn't expect. A secret door opens. They see the actual sky for the first time. For $50,000, they're offered a private chef because, for the first time, they get an option, a way out. Their minds were definitely telling them to just quit, take the easy way. Honestly, mentally, they were breaking. You start questioning everything, right? Maybe I'm not built for this. What happens if I stop now? Is all this for nothing? But then, a turning point. They remembered why they started. Not just for the money, but to prove they wouldn't quit. So they make a decision. They reject the chef, and the door closes. But day 11? That's where things get genuinely dangerous.
You see, the host wasn't just blindly guessing what they wanted. The room was bugged. When Susie was venting about wanting coffee, or Bailey was begging for just a little bit of seasoning, the host was listening. So by day 30, the offers were hyper-tailored to their private cravings. Plus, they weren't being asked to give up all the money, just a tiny slice of it. It's this brilliant, evil exploitation of the sunk cost fallacy. The longer you stay in there, the more you feel like you've actually earned a little comfort.
Which brings us to this crazy comparison of willpower versus weakness. At first, they had this iron discipline, right? Rejecting a $50,000 private chef, rejecting $50,000 smart beds. But by day 30, the sensory deprivation literally broke them. They happily threw away $10,000 just for a coffee maker, and another $10,000 for some Harry Potter books. Their super frugal mindset was completely hijacked by this primal, desperate need for just any kind of varied stimulus.
And it just gets harder. On day 50, for $20,000, they actually bought a brief visit with their families. Susie's mom even brought a birthday cake. But it caused this massive emotional whiplash. Susie said it perfectly. That's the worst feeling so far. The highest of highs, and now back to our little cube all alone. Getting that tiny taste of the outside world, a taste of love and normalcy, it actually made going back into isolation so much harder to endure.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sheer financial damage of the Day 70 blind auction. The host brought back every single item they had previously rejected: the beds, the movies, the chef, plus a mystery box. But here's the catch. They had to submit a blind bid. If they bid even one single penny under the host's secret minimum price, they'd get absolutely nothing. And man, the paranoia really set in. They were terrified of missing out on these comforts after 70 grueling days.
Driven by that pure terror, they bid $100,101. But the secret minimum, it was only $69,000.
They overpaid by a mile, throwing away over $30,000 just for the guarantee of a little relief. To put that into perspective, it perfectly shows how extreme boredom and isolation will completely short-circuit your financial logic.
But here is the massive twist. You'd probably think that finally getting cozy beds, a TV, and hot water would make the last 30 days an absolute breeze, right? Yeah, no way. Comfort breeds conflict. Once they weren't in pure survival mode anymore, their personality differences became glaringly obvious, and it sparked some severe cabin fever and intense interpersonal friction.
Susie's exasperation basically reached a boiling point. She was saying Bailey is wired right now. This happens literally every morning. He's just nonstop, so energetic all the time. Think about it. When you are trapped in a tiny cube, someone else bouncing off the walls with high energy at 3 a.m. isn't just annoying. It literally feels like an assault on your sanity.
And trust me, the feeling was entirely mutual. Bailey was so desperate for interaction. He just wanted to play the Monopoly game they bought, but Susie constantly retreated inward. She preferred taking long showers or just getting lost in her books. Bailey was super frustrated, venting. It's impossible to get her to focus. They finally had everything they wanted materially, but the environment itself had basically turned them against each other.
Which brings us to the grand finale, day 100. This was the ultimate test of a bond forged in extreme isolation. They had spent 100 whole days together, practically becoming enemies in those final weeks because of the cabin fever, and literally hours before they could walk out that door, the host hit them with one last, brutal twist.
They were thrown straight into a classic game theory scenario, the prisoner's dilemma. If you're not familiar, it's basically a paradox where two people, acting in their own self-interest, can actually end up destroying the best possible outcome for both of them. It was the perfect intellectual trap for their day 100 decision.
So the crucial point is how incredibly dangerous this final choice was. They were blindfolded, wearing noise-canceling headphones, and presented with two buttons, split or steal. If they both choose split, they share the remaining cash equally. If one chooses steal and the other splits, the stealer takes the whole pot. But if they both act out of pure greed and hit steal, they walk away with absolutely zero. Nothing, after 100 days of pure torment.
And let me tell you, the psychological warfare was working flawlessly right up to the final seconds. Listen to Bailey's logic as he's sitting there agonizing over the buttons. What do you say to somebody that steals? Maybe you get ahead of it and you steal it. He wasn't even just being greedy. Intense paranoia had infected his brain, and he was seriously considering stealing just to protect himself from being left empty-handed.
As the countdown clock is ticking down to 0, this was the number hanging in the balance. $360,000 left in the vault. A staggering amount of money for two people who had just sacrificed a third of a year living inside a giant white shoebox. The tension was literally suffocating.
But then, the clock runs out, and the room lights up green. A green light signals cooperation. Both Bailey and Susie chose to split. Despite all the crazy cabin fever, the annoying habits, and that intense, creeping paranoia in the final moments, their shared trauma and resilience actually prevailed over greed. They beat the chamber, and they walked away wealthy.
It is just an incredible testament to human cooperation under immense pressure. But it leaves us with one final lingering thought. I want you to be brutally honest with yourself here. After 100 days of extreme isolation, pure annoyance, and relentless psychological manipulation, sitting there in the dark with those two buttons, what would you have chosen? Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning the way our minds work, and I'll catch you in the next one.